republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. I just have one brief remark at the opening, and that is that this Saturday at 10 a.m. we'll be having the Wall of Fame induction at the high school. So they'll be honoring some former graduates who were recommended for inclusion on the Wall of Fame there. So it's always a good event, and it's just another indication to me that we're getting back to somewhat normal state of affairs. So you're certainly invited to attend. It'll be at 10 a.m. at the high school. So at this point, I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. And before the Wall of Fame homecoming on Friday night. So get out your Long Beach gear and come cheer on our team. So tonight, we are going to begin reinstituting the Students Showcase, which we had started doing a couple of years ago, then discontinued, obviously, when we went virtual. But we're really excited tonight to have some of our middle school students here to focus just briefly on the middle school greenhouse program. I'd like to ask Mr. Beard and Ms. Tracy to lead that presentation.
All right, can you hear me okay? All right, welcome. We're so excited to be able to talk about the greenhouse. I'm Mrs. Beard, the principal here at the middle school. And here we have...
Hi, I'm Ms. Tracy, Director of Science for Long Beach Public Schools. And we have...
Ava Gardula.
Castle Cox, Sydney Bergstein,
Joseph Potenzi,
Rex Flores,
Tabitha Freeney, to help us in our presentation. We're going to talk quickly and then really turn it over to the students. So where it all began, just quickly in case you don't know the history, this began actually in the 2018-19 school year. Our PTA had this great idea. Dr. Romanelli was the principal, and they really got this off the ground. We had Ms. Conway, Ms. Laura Phillips, Joanne Myers, Beth Kramer, BOE, the Board of Ed supported this, Central, Dr. Romanelli, and they really got all of this off the ground. We didn't get to put this up right away when we got it. We had to wait because COVID hit, and we ended up getting it up last year. And now here we are, ready to share our next steps with you.
Thank you. The ribbon cutting ceremony that we had last year happened on May 24th. And sorry, sure. So we formally unveiled the greenhouse on May 24th last year, and this year we're excited to get some of the curriculum underway. We had some teachers write curriculum over the summer, and the students are going to talk in a few minutes about what we are going to do this year. We are excited that this is really going to show how the greenhouse can be used to facilitate the middle school as a middle years program school, and the students will be engaged in hands-on learning experiences that really help them envision themselves as part of a bigger global context as responsible producers and consumers. So the first person is Mr. Latanzi.
The students from the 7th and 8th graders were helping build all these tables. They were using tools, the drills, some saws, drilling in the bolts. There was all the help from Mr. Pross. His group of all of them building this. All the students were also gluing pieces together because of COVID. It was making the building faster due to the cohorts going back and forwards.
Hi, I'm Castle, and a few weeks ago, my class went outside to the greenhouse with Mr. Frost to make sure the greenhouse was ready. He showed us how to sand all the sharp edges on the table so that no one would get hurt. We all got involved in sweeping and preparing the greenhouse, so it was ready for our science project. Here you can see that the class of the living environment investigated how radiation would affect plant growth, and basically they would just use the sun in certain areas to see what would happen. And this is like an example. This is a project from last year's 8th grade students.
So this is just some of the stuff that was done last year. They germinated and planted seeds of their choice. They investigated factors that affected growth. They practiced using the scientific method. They assembled all the planting tables, and they tracked temperatures through a digital app. So that's just some of the stuff. We really just got our feet wet last year with this, and now we're ready. This summer, the teachers worked on curriculum for this coming year, which we've already started and is underway. And you're going to hear more about that next from
So the greenhouse can help a lot with the 8th grade science curriculum and the living environment curriculum because they can practice more of the scientific method, learn more about reproduction, flower dissection, and the other things listed up there.
Seventh grade earth science, what is a greenhouse, measuring conditions, enhanced greenhouse effect. Sixth grade physical science, scientific method, investigating pH. The work that was done over the summer aligns with the 6th and 7th grade science curriculum. This was a great way for the teachers to take the curriculum and make it more hands-on experience for the students. 7th graders beginning experiments investigating factors that affect plant growth. At school, in science class, we are starting plant experiments. My experiment is what is the effect of the temperature of water on plant growth. Other experiments in my class are what is the effect of seltzer water versus normal water, or what is the effect of Gatorade versus normal water. So these are pictures from earlier today in science class. So my class went outside to water our plants. For my experiment, my group and I are researching what is the effect of different fertilizers on the height of a sunflower. So we will compare manufactured organic fertilizer, so Miracle-Gro, or a natural fertilizer like worm castings from our own worm farms. The independent variables are the plants with manufactured fertilizer and the natural fertilizer because these are the plants that we are changing and testing. The constant is the plant with no fertilizer because that's what's staying the same. The dependent variable is the height of the plant because that's what we'll be testing. Throughout this experiment, we'll be collecting and analyzing data. At the end, we will write a conclusion that will tell us whether our hypothesis was correct or incorrect and explain some of our data. We've all followed the scientific method.
So based on what everyone has said, these are not just science, the other classes that will have the opportunity to utilize the greenhouse. Like math, they can talk about budgets and stuff. Social science is like what it says up there, the history, culture, and stuff like that. For English, they can use it in writing, talk and write about what they've been doing. In art, it's a good way to like decorate it and like help with like photography and painting and stuff for the greenhouse. Other things, it says life skills, like to teach the students about life skills while utilizing the greenhouse, and as well as home careers and health, and the sustainability, like it says on the side up there. So the greenhouse is a good way for other classes to use it without just being science.
Some of the ways that we're going to specifically incorporate some stem goals is by propagating plants like succulents and some decorative beach grass, which is like the goldfish of plants and can survive in a lot of sort of rough growing weather conditions. We have already started worm farms in the middle school classrooms, so that's a new thing to this year, and we're going to see, like the student said earlier, how the fertilizer from the castings compares with some other fertilizers. There were some posters about how to compost in the courtyard of the middle school, but they have kind of gotten lost along the way over the past year and a half or so. So we're going to have kids make new posters and design, new signs of how to compost. And we do have a teacher at the middle school who is excited to learn to attend a class to get the food handler's license. That course is offered in the city, and the license is awarded upon completion. So we're hoping to be able to really do a farm-to-table kind of experience, but we understand that might be a little bit of a winding road to get there. We have right now an electric sensor hooked up in the greenhouse that is measuring temperature and pressure and different factors inside of the greenhouse. This next slide shows some of the data that we have been reading over the past week or so. And we see we've capped the temperature at 90 degrees, and all those red blips at the top of the screen are actually dangerous conditions for plants where the plants won't survive. So we are hoping to utilize the greenhouse all year long. Right now we're kind of bound to Mother Nature, but Mrs. Beard is going to talk about where we hope to go with some more resources.
Yeah, so where do we go next? So we are at the mercy of Mother Nature, and we're finding, based on the data from the app, is that it gets too hot in the day and too cold in the evening. So we definitely need to get something to regulate temperature in there. And the other part of it is so we need fans and heaters and things so that we are not losing any of our growth to the frost. And we also need to get a water system going. So a regular hose, like a 5/8 hose, isn't strong enough to water the large area. So we need to figure out our irrigation system as well. And we're hoping to have, the plan is to have our students help to design the needs for this. So it's just another piece of all of this. And we look forward to having them plan all of this out with us. And, and as Ms. Tersey said, we also look forward to having our family and consumer science classes really focusing on greenhouse learning and trying to get some farm to table things up and running. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much to all of our students. Thank you so much for coming and helping us on this.
Thank you so much to all of you. This is often the highlight of the board meeting when you guys come and tell us about what you're learning and the exciting things that we have going on in our schools. And we know that you might have some homework to do and things to go home and read and work on or just get a good night's sleep. So you are welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but if you want to go, it's probably a good time to scoot out. And we're going to shift in a few minutes to our presentation on mental health and SEL supports for students, but just in between while we shift presentations, Mr. DeVito has some great news for us today that he wants to share.
Thank you, Dr. Gallagher. So the fall is always a time when homeowners get ready to pay their tax bills. And I know that's not usually a topic that we like to celebrate because we know what taxes are like. But why we have good news today is that perhaps it's because of COVID, and I'm not quite sure of the reason, but the county has been shifting the burden away from class one. And this is the second year in a row where it's been shifted away from the class one homeowners, which is the single, 2, and 3 family homeowners. So anybody who is a class one property owner, you should see an actual decrease in the school tax amount that's due. And usually the first payment is due this fall. So let me tell you a little bit of why you'll be able to determine that. So we know that for this year, the tax levy was the same as it was last year, right? So as we're preparing the tax rate, we were able to do some calculations to see that even though the tax rate typically goes up, and it varies depending on assessed value, it's a very complicated thing, that because the adjusted base proportion actually is shifted away from class one, the average homeowner should experience about $100 decrease in their school tax amount. Now, it may differ homeowner to homeowner. It depends on what your actual taxable assessed value is. But on average, for the average homeowner, it should be about $100 less than what was paid in last school year. That's the good news we have.
Sorry, always less taxes is always good news. Mr. DeVito, thank you. Fewer taxes? Lower taxes, that's better. So tonight, We promised last year that one of the first things we would highlight in the fall was a focus on mental health and SEL supports for our students as they return to school. These are anxious times for everyone. I think, for all of us who have gone through the last 18 months, somebody referred to it to me today as the pandemic of anxiety. And I think that's an interesting way to describe where we are as a community over the past 2 years. And we wanted to highlight the many, many things that our schools are doing in terms of mental health and SEL supports. This presentation, although I'm speaking through it, is a result of contributions from nearly every administrator on our team, principals, assistant principals, our coordinator of guidance, many of our special education coordinators, and some of our individual guidance counselors and school psychologists and social workers as well. So I'm not going to go through every single bullet with you. There are copies of the presentation up here if anyone wants to take one home with them. I think there's some great information in here, but I'd like to just highlight a few things on each page. So first of all, there are some commons that are kind of across all school levels, and the overarching theme is the focus on supporting a return to school. Every single building had tours and visits for any students who were new to the building or virtual last year. To be out of a building for an entire year and then return can be daunting, and you'd be surprised how much children forget, especially at young ages. So that gave them an opportunity to become acclimated before they had to return to class. There were welcome events for students in the new grades, K6 and 9, and really just a focus on making students feel comfortable. We have implemented tons of outdoor time this year. We promised the community that even though we have a mask mandate, we make sure that our children have lots of outdoor time, lots of time to take the mask off and take a break from it, and we've done that across the board. This was also the first year of the full implementation of our Choose Love SEL program, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the presentation. We've seen a greater integration of mindfulness practices across the district this year than I think we ever had. I think, we introduced mindfulness in our elementary grades 3 years ago. Our hope is that it becomes just standard practice, and in every class, students can practice these techniques. And what is mindfulness really? It's teaching self-regulation, self-management, kind of dealing with your own emotions and your own feelings. And it's something that, for a long time, people just assumed happened by osmosis with students. But we understand now more than ever that helping them work on some of those techniques can make them into very healthy adults. We've checked in on any of our early absentees, although I have to say our absentee rate has been the lowest this year than it has been in years. There could be many reasons for that, but I think people are just glad to be back in school. I think parents are glad to have children back in school, and so our absence rate has been lower than in customary years. We've had great support from our community partners, Mental Health, REACH, and Long Beach Aware. We've continued our CPI training for staff. We have building level SEL committees across the board, and we've really focused on just giving our students lots of opportunities to have fun, first of all, because that is an important part of childhood, and also to have support where they needed it, whether it was academic support or mental health support. At our elementary level, you can see some great photos of students, Dr. Manelli, sitting outside. They're reading together outside. They're having lessons under trees. That's a great practice on, in any year, never mind COVID. And one of the things that we really hope that comes out of this is that we will utilize more outdoor time permanently, because it's great for our students to be outside. We live in the most beautiful district on Long Island. Why wouldn't we want our kids to be outside and take in that fresh air as much as possible? Some other things at the elementary level, you can see those two students sitting on the bleachers using some mindfulness techniques, other students doing projects outside. They had a celebration of International Dog Day. We've had great family activities. And again, our PPS staff providing intense support to any students or families who are struggling. And we've seen an increase in people struggling across the district. I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but our high school counselors, our high school social workers, I should say, have a caseload of over 70 students each. That is tremendous for this time of year. So we definitely are seeing students with issues that they want to talk about, with some anxiety that maybe we didn't see before, and we're trying to utilize all of our resources and staff to do that. We've also integrated some of these SEL activities into the curriculum. What does that look like? If you just go to the next slide, Dr. Minnelli, this is a great little snippet video that gives you an idea of what we're talking about. Well, in the video, there's a girl who is in her English class, and there's a picture of a suitcase on the smartboard, and she's talking about how in English they use their journals to put all of their worries into the suitcase and pack them away. And she said that it helped many of them to feel calmer and feel like they were, getting rid of their worries in a productive way. We've also integrated our Choose Love program at the elementary level in grades pre-K through 5. An example of a unit in our Choose Love program is the Courage unit. We talked a little bit, and these units are implemented in health and guidance cushions with our elementary guidance counselor, about courage, about the idea of being brave, about being comfortable with yourself, things that are great for students to hear. There's a connection to our mindfulness curriculum as well, in that there are a lot of mindfulness techniques woven into that. Students are encouraged to take a brave breath, to calm themselves in fearful situations. You can see at the next slide some reflections on a Jamboard from one of our 3rd grade classes about brave. I am brave in baseball games. I'm brave when I meet new people. I'm brave when I go to the Jones Beach obstacle course. That's very brave. In soccer games, etc. So just having students reflect on different times that they're brave helps them remind themselves that they can be brave when things are frightening to them. These, as I said before, many of these lessons are kind of taught on a push-in basis with our elementary guidance counselor, Ms. Golden. She pushes in kind of on a rotating basis, so it wouldn't be every single cycle for every single grade, but she may be pushing into a classroom maybe for 4 weeks in a row, and then she would move on to another classroom. And again, some topics that they're covering: asking for help, identifying your emotions. If you've ever had a young child burst into tears and say, "What's the matter?" and they can't tell you why, sometimes it's helpful to let kids be able to identify those emotions. Are you sad? Are you upset? Are you mad? Are you scared? Those kind of things. And also identifying trusted and supportive adults. As I said before, this is also integrated into our mindfulness curriculum with Ms. Giolis. Again, some topics that she covers: mindful bodies, mindful listening, response versus reaction. Do we react to something, or do we respond in a calm way, and the difference between those things? And just understanding how the brain works. It's great for students to understand how their brain works when they have different kinds of conflicting feelings. And again, this is really about self-management, self-regulation. It's the basis of conflict resolution, and it's a good part of just being mentally and physically healthy. In our middle school program, I love these pictures because you can see some work in our outdoor gardening bags, which lead to our greenhouse. The top right picture is an amazing program that I got to experience today. We for the first time this year, gave our life skills program in both the middle school and high school surf lessons. And I got to go down today. It was the highlight of my day, and see these amazing kids surfing. I mean, they had grins from ear to ear. They looked totally confident. I mean, I certainly couldn't do that, so I was really impressed, and they were so excited to share it and show it. And then again, just a typical thing, Mr. Harvey, that might be your class outside, just taking in the fresh air, moving the classes outside whenever we can. In addition, at the middle school, they've begun the practice of Mindful Mondays, kind of using Monday as a point to focus on mindfulness, and they'll have a minute in the day where they kind of just stop and focus on, maybe it's deep breathing, or maybe it's counting to 10, or just listening to the sounds around you. And they'll do additional mindfulness activities during recess periods on Monday. Speaking of that, we've been giving all of our middle school students recess. which we had started to do on a more limited basis prior to the pandemic. But, you know, a switch doesn't go off when they go from 5th to 6th grade. They still need some time to run around. They still need some time to be kids. So that's a practice that we'd like to keep going forward. Weather permitting, they have outdoor lunch, recess every day, PE outdoors, and outdoor classrooms. We do have at least 3 small tents at every building, and we're utilizing those tents on bad weather days. And we hope to be able to do that well into December, especially if it stays as warm as it is now. Again, the Choose Love program, the middle school and high school implemented primarily in the health classes. And we're continuing our tradition of Cross Valley for our 6th and 7th graders. That trip is a really character-building, life-changing trip for kids, and we really felt it was important to give them that experience this year. And then there are just some classroom activities. The teachers really focused this year on some icebreaker activities, giving kids an opportunity to re-get to know each other. Some of the kids weren't there last year, or if they were hybrid, they didn't see half of their class. So you may have heard about these students doing some of those get-to-know-you kind of activities as they started the year. There will be a middle school motivational speaker in October on overcoming obstacles. The middle school has student-to-student mentors with Lido. So the 8th graders in middle school go and they're mentors, buddies to the kindergarten students. That program is being expanded upon as well. And they have adult mentors as well, staff members who agreed to be a mentor to a student who's identified as having some difficulty, whether it be academic or social emotional. And, you know, they may have lunch with the student once a week or just check in with them informally, but they're a person that they know they can go to in that building if they need support or they have questions. Our counselors, as I said before, and our social workers and psychologists have been just instrumental in providing support for students in whatever way they needed it. At the middle school, they conducted welcome back SEL lessons. They tried to help the counselor get to know their students and the students get to know each other and just help students find where the resources were in the school. And they're doing monthly check-ins with every student this time on via Google Classroom. At our high school, so again, you can see our surf program on the right, our yoga class, some of the outdoor classes that we have at the high school. I've seen more students eating lunch outside the high school than I ever have in my 6 years here. So they're definitely utilizing the outside space as much as they can. Again, the counselors, the guidance department were intentional about really orienting the 9th and 10th graders, especially those who were remote. They've had groups of 9th graders in small groups, whether they were remote or not, to just help familiarize themselves with the counselors, with the building, and their resources. And they're really starting to check in with students on a more regular basis than we ever have before. They provide an open door policy, and this goes for all of our mental health staff at the high school, and proactive contact with any students who failed courses last year. So they're not waiting to see if they have trouble this year. If they had any difficulty last year, they're proactively contacting them and trying to stay on top of them and make sure that they have access to tutoring or anything that they need. We are utilizing the additional secondary social worker specifically for students who have been impacted by COVID, whether it's anxiety or just issues with reorienting back to the school day. If students have been off campus for 18 months, that in itself can be difficult. If they left in 7th grade and they're returning to a different building in 9th grade, that's a tremendous adjustment for students. Or they left in 10th and they come back as seniors. So there are students in particular who have been impacted. Or students who have lost family members who have had significant illness in their family. And we've made some referrals to our outside agencies as well. As I said to you before, our counselor load at the high school is extremely high right now. So we're maximizing, they're doing both mandated and non-mandated counseling. Our additional social worker is doing some non-mandated counseling as well. And we continue to refer to outside agencies, particularly REACH, for students who may need wraparound support with their families. REACH, as you may know, has the ability to see students outside of school and to do family counseling as well. Home visits, targeted support. all of the things that, kind of a common theme in all of our schools. I put the next slide in because I wonder how many of you were aware that our high school has a full-on food pantry. I had never seen this room, I have to confess, and I thought, when I heard about a food pantry, it was a little closet somewhere where, there were a few cans of things or boxes of macaroni. This is a huge food pantry. It also has clothes for students in the winter, and it is extremely well utilized by our kids. They go shopping with a bag, there's no stigma attached, no questions asked. It is supported by local community organizations who fundraise for it and either give us money that the high school staff then goes to Costco and buys these food items, or by collecting the food items themselves. It's also supported tremendously by our own staff, who really provide out of their own pocket donations to this pantry. And our students need it and use it. It's amazing, from what I heard from the high school, that these supplies dwindle quickly. The high school also tried to, emphasize some fun, spirit building activities. We have homecoming this weekend. Class Olympics have already started. They're planning for the pep rally. They're trying to really give students an opportunity to be as normal as possible. They have also integrated mindfulness activities into classes. You can see our yoga class there, and even our principal sometimes needs yoga. The lower right is Mr. Myers. And they have been utilizing the morning wave to support students as well. So, I think the bottom line is our staff members took providing support for our students extremely seriously, and across a multitude of ways. They're willing to try to provide our students with the best kind of experience they can have and support them in these unusual times, which I'm so grateful for as the superintendent. And I'll take questions and comments from the board. Turn it off.
Did you want to begin?
Sure. Thank you once again, Dr. Gallagher, for that presentation, and to everyone who was part of it. Not much of a question, more of a comment. But when I also participated today in the surfing program for the life skills students, and it was awesome. I know Ms. Pace was a big part of it as well. It really was a great experience seeing these kids who have so many sensory limitations for one, and other things as well. Get in the water and really be one with our biggest asset that we have. And it was also great seeing the high school students who were in the surf club actually mentor these kids as well. So it was a two-part process, and I think it was incredible learning for everybody. And there's one more comment, and I'll say it's the process of this at work. So this weekend I went apple picking, which is probably half the world went apple picking on Long Island. And I got home, and my third grade daughter decides to not tell me what she's doing, disappears, as third graders do. I found that she decided to write a book about her experience to her teacher. And it was, it probably should be published in my mind, but it was such a great book. And it included everything you said in this thing, was pictures, drawings, reflection, what she appreciated, how her brother bothered her, everything possible in this book. And the fact that she did that was amazing to me, and I just appreciate everyone who participated in those types of things. So great job. I love seeing these types of presentations. This is the stuff you don't see on standardized tests, but it really does impact our kids and our community, and job well done.
Anybody else? Davis, Aurora.
Thank you, Dr. Gallagher, and to all who contributed to this presentation. I'm wondering, because it was on my old and new business question, so I might be able to get out of the way now. You said that absenteeism is far lower than it was. Are we no longer concerned about chronic absenteeism, or is it too early in the year to tell that?
Oh, I think it's way too early to tell that. I think that, is something we'll have to continuously monitor. And again, I think a lot of it is a function of, you miss what you didn't have. So many students are back, but we still do have students who are,
subject to school refusal or school anxiety. So I think that's still something we have to monitor, but it's good to see the numbers in a good direction.
All right, overall, I had two comments about it. I'm really, a year ago when we sat and listened to this presentation, I was a bit disappointed in the social emotional component of both the middle school and the high school curriculum. So I'm really happy to see that the committee last year focused, there was a separate committee, I understand, focused on that, and I'm really happy to see that they made some changes. Because it was just kind of like a, sign up for yoga before that. The other thing I wanted to say was that I was on the SEL committee last year, and the staff on the committee were talking about the mindfulness minute at the beginning of class, and me being the probably jerk that I am, said, there's 180 days of school. If you take a minute every single day, that's 180 minutes of instruction that we're missing. And they said, if we take that mindfulness minute, everyone in their own, they were so articulate and so almost inspiring the way that they talked about it. They said, if we take that 1 minute at the beginning of class, the next 41 minutes are so much better that it makes up for the 180 minutes. So while this is a topic and an area that we can't necessarily measure, I have to trust that our staff sees that it's making a big difference, and that that really us as a district making that a priority is a good thing. I just have a couple of quick questions. The tents, we are using the tents, right? We are, okay. All the time.
Well, we don't use them if the weather is good. But if there's poor weather, the custodians do put the tents up so the students can have some outdoor time.
Okay. And I was actually walking through the West End. I was walking through the West End the other day, and I saw a first grade class outside doing a science lesson on shadows, and I was so impressed. Sure. Now, you started to talk a little bit about this, but it wasn't really clear. We have not always had everyday recess for our middle schoolers. And I think you said that starting right before COVID, we were starting to phase that in. And in the presentation, it says that there's recess every day. Is that a COVID thing because we're trying to get kids outside, or is that a permanent change?
We would like to make it a permanent change. We had started to do it pre-COVID. We've had a lot of conversation in the district over the past 5 years about increasing our students' physical activity, opportunities for unstructured play. And again, that's not a switch that goes off when you go from 5th to 6th grade. It hasn't traditionally been in the middle school model to have recess, but I think kids at that age, I need it.
Okay, I totally agree with that, but tell me how that plays out, because from what I remember of the middle school, there was 3 groups, and one little group got to go out in that area in between the library and the auditorium.
So that's the difference.
Third day.
Yeah, that's the difference.
So where are the kids going?
In all different areas. I don't know, Mrs. Beard, do you want to speak to this?
Sure, yeah, so they're eating outside behind the cafeteria, that's a large space, and then when they go outside to hang out and play ball and stuff, it's out in the fields. So it's huge area. So we have a small group in that basketball court area, and then we take the rest all the way out to the field.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Why didn't we always do that?
We added the basketball hoop my first year, and we started getting kids out. It just evolved, and we started getting out more and more. And then when COVID hit,
I'm certainly glad.
I'm with you.
We talked sometimes about the positive things that happened from COVID. One of them was like CSE meetings on Zoom, where like godsend to a lot of people. And this is another thing, because I've been arguing for kids to get outside in middle school for recess since my own child was in middle school. So I'm really happy to see that it's happening. Okay. And what is it to me? Maybe I'm losing the ability to understand the technology, but at both the middle school and the high school, it talks about counselors doing monthly check-ins with all students via Google Classroom. So that's just like a survey thing?
It can be a survey, it can be a small group that they take through Google Meet, it can be just a note through Google Classroom, hey, this is Dr. Gallagher, I'm your counselor, just checking in with you today, let me know how you're doing. If the student writes back, I'm doing great, no problem. Or if the student says, I'm not really doing well, then there's a follow-up. Just Fallon, if there's anything I'm missing, something.
Yeah, we're, the middle school counselors are doing it monthly through their Google Classroom for all students. They're sending out a survey with several questions just about how they're doing on different elements of life. And then the counselors in the middle school are utilizing that to identify students that are reaching out for additional support or students who are not responding to the survey at all. So we're identifying those students and then they're reaching out to them, taking the initiative to make sure they see them or speak to them or make contact with them in another way. At the high school, we're seeing ninth graders in small groups, drop-ins, and the counselors are also articulating with the ninth grade team teachers to talk about students that are exhibiting any kind of issues or whatnot. So we're taking a really a proactive approach at the ninth grade to try to get ahead of students having issues becoming bigger.
Excellent. Okay, and my last question, which I think you probably partially just answered now, particularly at the high school, what about the fall through the cracks kid? We have targeted intervention or contact with kids who failed subjects or who are exhibiting problems or who have said that they have an issue. So maybe those kids that don't respond, but what about those kids that just say, yep, everything's fine, but everything's not fun? Is there somebody paying attention to that?
I was going to say, we take a collaborative approach with all faculty and staff. The student really isn't fine, someone's going to notice. Perhaps it's a teacher who sees them every day in the classroom, notices maybe their head's down, they're not attentive. So those signs definitely accumulate and become noticeable, and perhaps that's when the teacher has a conversation with the student, the family, a social worker, a counselor, a dean, or takes it to the next level to help that student get to a better place. So I think that there's layers of noticing those kinds of things with students, and just the more contact time we have with kids, part of our mission is to increase as much contact time as we can for our counselors, social workers, teachers to be with the students, and they're the ones in the front line that really sort of notice those changes.
Excellent. Great, thank you so much. I would like to thank you for the presentation. I'm very happy that we are focusing on social emotional learning for our students, especially in this year. I just have a couple of questions. You said in the presentation, there's an integration of the mindful practices into the classrooms. How often does that occur in the elementary? And you said it's also happening in the high school. So what classes exactly are they able to practice mindfulness?
Sure, so they can do it in every class. In some classes, particularly at the secondary level, it may just be a beginning of class exercise just for a minute, just to settle people down. As I said in the presentation, the elementary students also cycle through our mindfulness special with Mrs. Yolis, and that's a more in-depth period to kind of teach them some of these techniques, which hopefully they can take with them, moving forward. And that happens in a cyclical way, much the same way that the guidance lessons happen. So they may have Mrs. Yolis for 5 weeks, once a cycle, 5 cycles rather, and then not again until 3 cycles later. But what we're really seeing more and more, Mrs. Conway, is, and this is what we were hoping for, is just becoming part of the Long Beach practice. That students, we've had Mrs. Yolis in classes now for 3 years. We've had a number of other teachers and staff members who have gone for mindfulness training, and it is something you need to learn. I certainly didn't know all of these techniques as an educator. And they are taking it upon themselves to help other staff members learn as well, especially at the secondary level. And little by little, students are seeing that this helps them. So they're doing it on their own, and teachers are giving them the space to do it. So I think the administrators here could let me know, but I think we're starting to see it take hold, which was the reason that we put this program kind of on a long-term plan, that we would have the instruction long enough to make sure that students were able to do it on their own, that more staff were able to adopt it. I'm seeing nodding heads, so I'm not.
Thank you. Also, I know for years we've tried to encourage students to join all different types of sports, clubs, extracurricular activities. How are we changing our approach in that way to actually have more kids participate from all different types of levels and from all?
So I actually don't think we need to change our approach on that at all, because I think we've been super successful at that. I think I skipped over the slide that 30% of our high school students right now are participating in athletic activity. If you look at the number of students who are participating in clubs and music activities, that grows to nearly everyone. I think that, and we have for the last 3 years administered an exit survey to our seniors, and one of the questions is, to what degree do you feel that the high school had enough extracurricular offerings? That's one of our highest percentiles. It's like 96, 97% feel that we had, good extracurricular offerings. I think, it's always encouraging students to be involved, thinking of different ways that they can do it, being open to different models of that involvement. But I actually think it's something that is a point of pride for us, that, and it's a credit to our staff that we've been able to let them do that. As you know, we are out implementing this year an extensive elementary enrichment program. We haven't been able to do that as much in the elementary schools. So part of it, what we're using the federal money for, is to offer them some really enriching, engaging academic experiences that they can feel like they're a part of something. Sometimes a student goes to school because of soccer in the afternoon, or because they know they're having orchestra that day. So we want to make sure that we offer as many engaging student opportunities to our students as possible.
Well, thank you. And I would also just like to echo what Ms. Verona said about the middle school students going outside for recess. I think that is absolutely wonderful for the students to be able to get outside and play. Actually, for all the kids to have the extra time outside in nature to make them feel better about themselves. So I know my own daughter goes out for lunch every day. She's thrilled about it because they get the fresh air, and it really kind of grounds them and makes them feel ready for the rest of the day. So I'm so glad we instilled that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my only question is regarding the food pantry. So you said it was in the high school. I'm just curious if there's any plan to make that available for middle school or even elementary school if it's so successful.
Yeah, so part of our committee work this year on the equity committee is looking at the community schools model. So it's a term of art. There's a community schools grant. You can apply for community schools money. We probably can't apply for that grant money because we don't have a sufficient portion of students who are below the poverty line. But the idea behind community schools is that the schools become the hub, and that you survey families to see what they need. Is a food pantry the biggest need? Perhaps at the high school it is, but maybe not so much in the middle school, because students generally aren't worrying about the cooking and doing the meals there. But should we look at things like laundry facilities? I read a study a few years ago that in one community they determined that some degree of chronic absenteeism was due to the fact they didn't have anything clean to wear. I mean, that's beyond most of us comprehension, but for especially an adolescent or a high school student, that's tremendously important. If their family hasn't been able to go to the laundromat that week, they truly don't have anything to wear. They stay home. So my answer is not an easy yes or no. I think the work of that committee this year will be surveying our community and figuring out which aspects of community schools would be best for us to implement. Maybe it's a dental clinic. We have some space in our Nike building.
Maybe it's bringing a health clinic into our district on the weekends so that parents have easy access to healthcare. I don't know what it is, but I think we're looking towards making sure that we're meeting all of our students' basic needs so that when they come to school, they're ready to learn.
Thank you. My other comments are regarding the CERT program. I was down there today as well. I wish that the CERT for All people were here tonight so I could express my gratitude. This was just a tremendous program. So many moving parts behind it, but when it was presented to Dr. Gallagher, she jumped right in and made it happen. So thank you, Dr. Gallagher, for providing that for our students. I would love to see it expanded. I would love to see it available to more students. I think this is just part one, but the students, what I witnessed is that on the first couple days they were down there, they were so timid and afraid. And by day 6, these kids were charging waves like pro surfers, standing up. But it was more than that. They were coming out of the water. The language. They were speaking. They were, some of these kids are nonverbal, and you could just see it on their faces and their body language, and it was really inspiring. And they even upped the ante today by a special surprise by bringing a company called Forceability, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with what Forceability is, but Cliff Scooten arranged for 2 ponies to come onto our beach. So you have kids in the water learning how to surf that have never surfed before, and ponies on the beach that have never walked on the beach before, and that was funny in and of itself. But the kids got to, pet the ponies, and the whole experience was just incredible. So, so if anybody passed the boardwalk today and saw that happening, it was quite a show. And the only other thing I'm going to bring up is going back to the greenhouse presentation, which I don't know if it's part of this or not, but I just want to thank you, Ms. Beard, for presenting that to the students. And I want to just highlight the fact that the genesis of this came from a community-driven project that now has emerged into a school project that is now going to be part of the curriculum. And so I know Ms. Conroy was an integral part of that, as well as some of the other people in the room. And I think it's so important to remember that as community members, you're all sitting here tonight, if you have an idea, it can come into a reality. And I'm so thrilled that this came from a PTA fundraising event that's now going to be, utilized across all. I mean, I couldn't even write the list fast enough of all the different aspects that the district would use it as a whole. So I'm so thrilled to see that. And I think that's the way, hopefully, our district will continue to think and move forward. So thank you.
I just have a couple of questions concerning the mental health presentation. The first is last year or during the timeout that kids were home and virtual from school. I don't know whether it was concern expressed here or in my own reading that there was concern with when kids came back to school that it would take them time to reacclimate to school in the process of school. And do we find that to be the case this year? Did that sort of extenuate the need for mental health intervention because they were away for so long and then they were coming back to a very structured situation? That's my first question.
So yes, short answer is yes. So just some examples. I can say that our elementary principals, particularly the kindergarten and first grade students, they have indicated that they've had, in varying degrees, of course, but some particular difficulty this year in just acclimating to the school routine. You can imagine that a little 6-year-old who hasn't been in the school, normally you have that chance to develop that routine pre-K and kindergarten. So that's been difficult, and they're seeing behaviors in those students and just, things that are definitely a result of not having that school structure. In the upper grades, it does vary, but I was shocked, to be honest, with hearing from our mental health support staff the degree to which our social workers, psychologists, and even guidance counselors are seeing just an explosion of kids with issues that they need to discuss. To hear that our high school social workers have so many kids that they're saying that they're not taking a lunch break, they're not taking any break, that they're going from one end of the day to the other because they don't want to not be there for student in need, but that they're just seeing such an overwhelming need. And as you know, Dr. Rain, we've increased the number of mental health professionals at our secondary schools with
past few years. So I suspect that we'll start to see that level off. I do think some of that is just, the anxiety of the community, and I mean the large community, not Long Beach in particular. And just, the times that we've gone through over the last 18 months. But to a person, every administrator I asked that question of said that they've seen an enormous increase.
My next concern is just the notion of referral. And I find it difficult to somehow comprehend in a school of 1,300 or a middle school with 670 or 80, whatever it might be, just coordinating this rush of referrals, this rush of mental health intervention. I have concerns whether the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, whether the student is just seeing one social worker, or he's seeing the school social worker and the reach social worker, and maybe the counselor, and maybe the school psychologist. And I know Ms. Fallon has addressed the issue of collaboration in teams and getting teacher input, which is certainly vital. But how is this being coordinated so that, kids aren't being lost, that services aren't being duplicated, and that intensive service, when it's necessary or intervention, is being provided, rather than being sort of diluted by being provided by 5 or 6 or 7 service providers?
That's a great question, Dr. Ryan, and I can give you the answer by way of using the high school as an example. So we have 2 reach counselors at the high school, and primarily the referrals to counseling are, whether they're mandated or not mandated, are coordinated through the PPS coordinator at the high school. But we also have one of the high school's principals, Dr. Smith, is the reach liaison, and what they've been doing is meeting weekly and going through the list of the people that the counselors are seeing and doing that reconciliation. And they have in fact found, oh, this kid is seeing this one and is also on the reach caseload. Let's reconcile that and make sure they're only seeing one counselor just to preserve our resources. And I know that it's a work in progress for them because it's overwhelming, but I think that each building is trying to use the reach liaison administrator and their PPS coordinator to really look at those, lists of kids and who's seeing whom, and make sure that we're, first of all, giving them the correct support. Reach may be better for some students, and our in-house staff may be better for other students, but also to make sure there's no duplication.
And are we finding that this intense need for mental health intervention is having an impact on kids' academic performance?
I think it's probably too early to say on that. Again, I think we're at the 24th day of school. It feels like it's been a lot longer. 21st. Mrs. Connolly, I knew you would know. But who's counting, right? I think we're just starting to get into progress reports and looking at where students are. So I can't answer that right now, but I would be surprised if it's not.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Student organization announcements. Questions and comments from the public on tonight's agenda only?
Hi. Hi, how do I look at you?
You would just stand back a little bit. It's on, I just stand back.
Okay. Heather Locascio, 636 East Park. While I think it's wonderful that the kids in the middle school and high school have outdoor areas and stuff to sit during lunch, when the weather starts to get colder, I know in the high school they have like the lower commons and they can go into the auditorium. Is that going to be available to them all winter? And what do we have set in place for the middle school when it gets to be cold out and they're crowded in the auditorium, in the cafeteria?
So we are trying to see if we can get, bigger tents, so we can provide some sheltered outdoor space. But you know what, the other thing too is, when you think about it, there are really very few months here where kids can't go outside for a little while. And I think we have to kind of think differently about it. If we send our kids with gloves and we have extra gloves and hats, there's no reason kids can't go out and enjoy the fresh air for, 15 or 20 minutes, even if it's, 35 degrees or 40 degrees. But we are looking at bigger tents that would provide more shelter.
We have not had luck getting bids on those tents so far. I think it's because everyone and their mother has a tent. But we're hoping that, as we get into the colder months, if we can find some of those, we'll put those up as well.
And then just a second question on the same thing. In the high school and the middle school, do we limit the amount of kids that can go into the cafeteria? Or is it just the children choosing whether or not they go in the cafeteria, the commons, or outside?
They're in and out on a schedule, Ms. Lucasia, because we have to limit capacity.
Okay, so is it like almost like somebody's like taking count as they're going in? Like, how does that work?
I think it's just scheduled. Yes, they're just, yes. So if you're, maybe you have 4-period lunch, you're in for the first 20 minutes and out for the second, and maybe the other half is out for the first 20 minutes.
And that applies to the same thing in high school as well?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, Amy Sophia at the 535 Grand Boulevard. I'm an 11th grader in high school. And first, I just want to say thank you to all of you, especially.
The mic, I turned the mic off, sorry. It was making a squeaky noise.
I just want to say thank you to all of you, especially to Mr. Epstein. Played football, and we were just able to get our Saturday football game back after Roslyn canceled last minute. So I just want to say thank you to all of you, because we all know how it feels to have our homecoming canceled last minute. So it meant a lot to us to steal a game back for our seniors, and it also meant a lot, as we know, for them, because they got their homecoming back. But I am an athlete, member of the student organization, even though I'm on the board for junior class, but I'm here speaking on my own behalf. I was asked by Mr. Myers to be on the equity committee we heard a lot about today, and also on the curriculum committee. But because of the timing of those meetings, which I believe is at 4 or 5, I'm not able to make it because I'm an athlete and we have practices at those times. So I just feel like I have a lot that I can contribute, and I have a lot of values that I can share. So I was wondering if there's any different times. Sometimes we can schedule the meetings for a different time, because I feel like we're missing out on a large portion of the population to share their opinions on those committees because of the timing of those meetings.
That's a great point, Kate, and we certainly can look to do that. There's probably no time that everyone can come, but even if we set up alternate meetings so that some people can come at some time, what would be a good time for students who are involved after school?
A great time would be really anything after 6, because the vast majority of sports practices go until 6.
Okay, that's a great point. Dr. Romanelli, maybe discuss if we can, run some of those meetings at 6, or at least have meetings at 6, even if it just pulls in students who could make the earlier ones. There's also subcommittees too, and maybe the subcommittees can be later. So that's a great point, though. Thank you for sharing that. And can I just say, there's a great article on the district website tonight. I got a personal thank you from the superintendent in Huntington with kudos to what great sports you guys were. And they were just, I don't know if you all know this, but our team basically saved Huntington's homecoming on Saturday because the team that they were supposed to play was quarantined because of COVID. And so, they, I think, were shocked that we were willing to schlep all the way up to Huntington. And they were just so impressed with our students and how you conducted yourselves. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add thank you for coming up and speaking. I just admire so much that you did that. I think we need more students to do that, to advocate for themselves and for their student body. So thank you. And you just sound like you have so many things you're involved in that I think it's really admirable that you want to add another thing onto your plate by being involved in the equity committee, and I think you said curriculum. So I look forward to your input on that, because I think, as much work as we all can do, it really comes down to, and I've always said this, it's all about you guys. And we, as adults, think we know what you need, but there's nobody better to tell us than you. So thank you for coming and speaking tonight, and I would encourage more of your friends to come to the Board of Ed meetings and do more often, because we'd love to hear from you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, actually. Yeah.
Actually, I was going to say the same thing. This is basic. I admire the fact of how you came up here, and it's not easy to speak in front of a room full of people, and you spoke beautifully. We want to hear from you. Your voice, your point of view is extremely important to us. So please always know that you are always welcome to speak. And also, just like Mrs. Pace said, invite your friends to come as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi. There we go. I'm Kate Judge Patton, and I'm a parent in the district, and I'm at 233 West Fulton Street. And on an aside, so my daughter's on the surf team this year for the first time, and she's like very joyful. So it was a beautiful day today for her to be a participant. So again, it was really just a very, very special experience. I sat at the dinner table. I don't think other people are having this experience that you're having, I said to my daughter. So thank you for it. Okay, but I hope this is the right moment. I want to discuss the back to school night that recently happened. So over the summer, we had a tutor for my daughter who happened to be a teacher in the Valley Stream School District for English. And she recommended my daughter take 10th grade AP English, so she's developing the rigor she needs for her future. So when I asked the counselors, they said, we don't offer that. We offer honors for all. So when I went to parent-teacher night, the teacher in English said that he doesn't give out homework because the kids don't like doing it. And as a parent and educator, I do take offense to that. And it was very upsetting for me to hear. And I felt that, I just can't believe that he said that. And that is the policy. It was very shocking to me. And I can't imagine that an educator can't give out some vocabulary words for 10th graders or a reading assignment at home for a 10th grader. I can't really articulate how I was really shocked. So I can't imagine any parent would be okay with that, frankly. And that honors for all is really honors for none, if that is our policy. So I just wanted to share that feeling.
Thank you.
Everybody on this one? Hi, Johanna Sofield, 535 Grand Boulevard, Long Beach. Hello, everybody. So I didn't even realize on the agenda was the pantry, but just to let you all know that as Long Beach Christmas Angel, during the pandemic, we were aware of what Mr. Bruno and Chris Brown were doing. It was more than just the food pantry. You guys know, you all know that, but not the community knows it. But so we've announced today, we officially decided that we're having Christmas Angel. It's Friday, December 3rd. Very excited. The numbers are trending the right way. We have 2 rooms this year. We're going to cap the attendance a little bit. So it's all a go. We're thrilled, and we will be honoring them for their efforts because it's important to, we did a lot of food relief. But, there were only a handful of times I got a phone call from someone within the district where, maybe they went to a home that needed more than just the food. So it was very, they did a lot, so it's great that you highlighted it. I will just say for one of the questions pertaining to middle school, if someone asked that question, the way it seems to work in the nonprofit space and in the community, and the way that seems to be explained to me is that sometimes the high school kids, they'll come in and they'll get food for their families, but lots of times the middle school kids and the elementary school kids, those families are already seeking out resources. So it's where that gap is, where maybe a kid's like independent, maybe some issues at home, so there are plenty of spaces where middle school and elementary school kids are getting service, and there's like more eyes on them. So starting at the high school is a great idea. I'm not so sure it would be needed like throughout because we have so many other food pantries and the community does have a pulse on them. Lots of times outside agencies get the pulse from, teachers, coaches, staff, and admin.
So we just wanted to add that input from someone who is outside kind of coordinating with a lot of different places. And yeah, thank you for letting him speak and hearing him, because he had somewhere to go and he said, I'm speaking tonight. So that worked out well. It was a good experience for him. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Treasurer's report for August 2021. I have a motion for approval of minutes for executive session and regular meetings of September 14, executive session and work session meeting of September 28, 2021.
Motion.
And a second. Second, Mrs. Rona. Any discussion? Space?
Yes.
Pinto?
Yes.
Rona?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
I vote yes. Presentation of the superintendent.
I ask the board to consider item 1, certificate of personnel.
Need a motion?
Motion.
Second. Any discussion? Space?
I'm going to abstain from this vote, just for part 1.
You're abstaining on all the items, just?
Nope, just one.
Just 1A?
Yep, so yes, and then I'm abstaining from 1A.
Okay.
1A, yep.
Okay, Pinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Rona?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
And I'd like to welcome Kristen Hyman, who's the new social worker at eSchool. Kristen, you want to lead? Thank you. Anyone else I missed tonight? I'm sorry. None of my business. I'd ask the board to consider item 2, non-certificate of personnel.
Motion.
Any discussion? Space?
Yes.
Pinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Rona?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Item number 3, I'd ask the board to consider the updated corrective action plan, and this is just a minor date change. It is not a substantive correction. The state is just getting around to reviewing some things that were submitted last year.
Motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? Space?
Yes.
Pinto?
Yes.
Mrs. Rona?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Item 4 is the first reading of the revised policy on public use of school facilities. No action is necessary on that. And I'd ask the board to consider items 5 through 8 together.
I'll make the motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Rona, any discussion?
I have a question about number 6, the approval of agreement, the RJ Consulting map. I was just wondering why we were going to use the grant funds, sorry, I can't see my glasses that right, excuse me. Why we were going to use the grant funds for professional development instead of adding personnel into the classrooms.
Sure, and as I think this came up a couple of meetings ago as well, the grant is for the corrective action plan that the state gave us in response to some of the disparities in state test scores in middle school, and we are actually required to use a portion of that grant for professional development, and this targets one of the areas that we thought would be most useful. So we can't shift it to something else. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, going on 5 to 8. No other discussion? Ms. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Pinto? Yes. Mrs. Rona?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Board of Education, additional new old business, if any?
I actually have some items. My first question really is about the elementary enrichment program. The courses are wonderful, but I'm wondering why the courses aren't offered at the same amongst all the schools.
So, as you know, this is the first trimester of the first year that we're doing this, and how we did this initially is to ask staff what they would be willing to teach and what they felt was qualified to teach. We don't necessarily have people at all schools who can do all things. That being said, I think by the second trimester, we'll identify some of the more popular and desired classes, and we'll try to recruit people even if we go cross schools or have to go do things in one building or more than one day. Forgive me, when is the second trimester again? It starts right after the holidays, August to January.
Yeah.
Thank you. My next question is really about
the high school, when I was there for open school night, wonderful, by the way, to see all the teachers in person. I noticed that there was some water damage on some of the tiles, and I heard that the roof was still leaking. So, Mr. DeVito, I know you said that you were starting to work on it, but what exactly was the damage, and when will it be fixed?
Well, there are two separate issues going on. One was some water infiltration coming in by the art rooms on the north side that we believe is only triggered when there's certain kind of winds or nor'easters, and that was already fixed, and they were waiting to get a certain piece of equipment in order to change out the ceiling tiles because of the height of the ceilings. They're very, very high, similar to the height in the cafeteria, and they need special equipment to come in and to move some of the art supplies. So that was supposed to have been done, I believe, last week. Then we're also hearing that there's some water infiltration at certain points in the towers, stair towers from the new roof. And then I know that the facilities department has contacted the roofer because it's still under warranty, so that they can come and investigate if it's a flashing issue, the way that the roof is attached to the wall, and that's coming in on the stair towers, then maybe that has to be addressed. So I know that this is one thing was fixed already, and one is underway, and it's a matter of working with the contractor to avail ourselves of the warranty.
I'm just concerned about people slipping with the water when things are slippery and maybe materials getting destroyed, because some of the leaks occurred near smart boards. So is that now protected now? I know that's two questions.
Sure, no problem. I haven't heard that any materials were destroyed. I haven't heard that. And I know that our school facilities team over at the high school is doing what they can to make sure that nothing is damaged and everything's protected. And they're also aware of the fact that there are these issues. So when it is a rainy day, they check those areas in the stair towers to make sure that there isn't any water so that someone can slip. And they, make sure that it's cleaned up, dried up immediately, and they monitor it throughout the day. And it's not with every rain. I know that. It's only with some rain that comes in a certain way. And the team over at the high school is well aware of it. And I know that, they're making sure that everything is safe.
So do we know exactly when they'll be able to come in to fix the roof, or are we still waiting?
I don't have that information, but as soon as I become aware of that, I'll certainly share it with the board.
Thank you. Last June, we were able to watch a video, not a video, but really the hard work of many high school students in a production called Names, Not Numbers. Does the high school have any plans to continue that project this year?
Yeah, they do, and actually, I think they wanted to give the sea legs first with the return, but I actually, Mr. Meyer spoke to Tobin Rosenberg this week about it.
Okay, so we'll be seeing something like that soon coming from the high school, and that's
Not
great.
soon.
Not soon.
Was that a high school production last year? I thought it was an outside production
That's correct.
that they brought in, that we had a showing of and planned to use as part of our curriculum.
That's correct.
So is that what we're saying again is gonna happen, or it
No.
becomes a high school
This will
production?
become part of the high school. Yes,
And it will be open to any student who wants to participate?
Of course, yeah, the high school is interested in, we had always been interested in doing it, we did not feel we could do it during COVID. A parent did it outside on her own, a number of our students were involved in it, we supported it, held the showing, but we'd certainly like to do it moving forward, and I know that Mr. Myers is excited about it.
Wonderful, thank you. At one of our last meetings, we had the commander of our local VFW stating that veterans would be very eager to come back into schools again to start talking to students. Our middle or our high school, do they have any plans to bring in veterans or to honor our veterans?
So I don't believe they have plans yet, Mrs. Conway, but that's certainly something that we're open to. I did ask her why that discontinued, and it seemed like it's just, some person who was doing it didn't do it anymore. We do invite registered military in for our career days and our career exploration programs. We're certainly not opposed to having veterans come in. Do we have any immediate plans for that right now? No. Okay, thank you. I have just a couple more questions. Actually, so at the high school, it seems, we've always talked about food service and what the kids are eating, what they're not eating, and mozzarella sticks seems to be a very popular dish. But what I'm hearing is that the most popular dishes sell out very quickly. And the kids kind of run to get online so they can get their favorite foods. So I was wondering if we're looking at our ordering to see if we can readdress what we order so that these favorite foods can be available to all students.
This is the first I'm hearing of this, Ms. Conway. Mr. DeVito, have you heard of this before?
Have not. The only thing that I heard was that we introduced some new items as a trial last week, and that those were very popular and sold out. But it was a new item that we were trying out. I think I heard from Mr. Swan that it was the breakfast sandwiches that was so popular. So, you know, we were trying it out. It was well received. I think I reported in the weekly update about that. And we'll certainly order it and order enough to meet the demand. But I haven't heard of any other menu item that was selling out to the point that students were asking for more and it was unavailable. But I'll certainly look into it.
That would be great, because I was very excited to hear that the kids really enjoyed some of the foods offered to them at the high school and middle school.
Yeah, could you just tell me what those items were?
Me and Mr. DeVito.
You.
So I heard there was a chicken parmesan sandwich that the kids loved to eat.
High school?
Yeah, at high school. Actually, that was really the one that I heard most about. I heard that most of the salads were gone, because they were enjoying the salads. And mozzarella sticks.
The yogurt is the number one best.
No, yogurt is not.
Good to know.
Sorry,
Thank
it's
you.
just the Caesar salad, the chicken parm, and the mozzarella sticks.
I'm so happy to hear that yogurt's not the number one. Thank you very much.
Also, I just have one more question, Dr. Gallagher. Back in our reopening plan, we were looking at the metrics and discussing things about how do we open our schools. Have you heard if the state is looking at the metric concerning an if or when they can modify their mask mandates? So it's funny you should ask that, because this week I actually reached out both through my superintendent's group and through our state senator's office to ask that very same question. As you know, that's not something we can decide on our own, but as the rates go down, I think it's certainly fair to ask at what point would we look at removing the mask or easing the mask mandates. I have not heard back, but I will let you know as soon as I do. Thank you. And at the high school, just one more question. I know there was talk about making sure all of our students had their IDs to help ensure that the only people who enter the building are people who are supposed to enter the building. How is that looking forward? Do all of the kids now have their student IDs? They don't. Mrs. Conway, as you're aware from the health and safety meeting, there's an issue with supply chain orders. And although we did order enough for 9th grade, there are students who've been virtual for a year and a half who have no idea where their IDs are. So we have placed orders for additional ID materials, and we will get them printed as soon as we can. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Please.
I have a follow-up question for Mrs. Conway's question about masks. Okay, so we're not hearing anything from the state about any kind of a metric for when this mask mandate can be modified. I would suggest that we as a board send a letter to the governor or the Department of Health or whomever saying our numbers are going down. We've been following your mandate and we want to know, I'm not asking, can we be relieved from this tomorrow? But do you have, or are you working on a metric to determine when we can be done with masks? So I guess I would make a motion that we send such a letter, we as a board send such a letter to the governor and to, I guess it has to go to the Department of Health because that's the organization from whom the mandate emanated. Anybody want to second that?
No, I think it's a great idea, and I think the superintendent is mentioning her consultation with the superintendent's board that they too took the same action, and we got other groups to do that. It might expedite the thought and hopefully action in that regard. I think it's a great proposal, Mr. Rowan.
I agree.
I agree.
So we don't have to vote on it, we just agree? Okay, do you want me to write that, Dr. Ryan, or you want to do that?
No, you can write it. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
beautiful. Okay, great. Okay, I have a couple of other things. The West End Community Center, the City of Long Beach gave up their lease on that, and they were supposed to do some work to be completed. Mr. DeVito, has that been done?
It has not been completed yet. They're still in the process of doing the work that they need to do in order to bring the space to the level that we will take over, in terms of some of the work they promised to do based on their own goodwill and some of what they felt is their responsibility. And it's a license. It's a license that they were voting. It wasn't a lease. They had a license to use the space, and we're waiting until the work is completed, and then we'll accept their termination of license.
Okay, so we had looked at that space back the week before school started. We did our tour. So that would have been like the 1st of September, and now we're into almost the middle of October. Has the city given you any timeline? Because it seems to me that once they vacate those premises, we have the use for them. Particularly, as we were talking earlier, if the weather gets colder and the kids can't go out as much, there's a big old room in there where kids could be recessing inside and not such big numbers. So do we have a timeline from the city of when they're planning on completing the work?
So some of it, I believe, is a parts issue, but I will get more information from facilities. We spoke about it last week, and I know that it's not something that they're dragging their feet. They just were waiting for some supplies to come in order to complete some of the work. But I will get more definite information and share that with the board.
Beautiful, thank you. And now the big question that I've been waiting for October 1st to ask, what is our operating surplus for the 2020-2021 school year?
So they're still completing the audit. They're just about done. So if you can just hold on a little bit longer, I'll be sending a final number home. But they didn't give the auditors did not give me a final number. But we do have a surplus.
Is our audit meeting is typically our last meeting in October? Is that going to happen in 2 weeks? If they haven't even given us final numbers yet?
It's sometimes it's the first meeting in November.
Okay.
So I think we're scheduled for that date.
And when, I understand that in November, when golf season is over, that's when the new entrance here at the Lido complex is going to be completed. But when is the whole project here at Lido?
I don't think it's going to be completed in November. That's when they're going to start the work, the golf course. So November is when they start.
Is this impeding people coming to and leaving the middle school
I haven't
during
heard
the
anything.
school day? I haven't been over here.
I haven't heard anything.
All right, good. Okay, I did have one follow-up comment from our presentation last week on performance, on academic performance. I felt like I was a little hard on the presenters and the administrators, particularly in a COVID year. I did appreciate getting, as part of our update, the historical information, because for me, that helps me to see where we're at. And I understand that COVID is a different year, and I understand that all of those standardized tests were voluntary and didn't mean anything, so we can't be relying on those. But I also gave it some thought afterwards, and I'm wondering, as a parent of a kid who took standardized tests from 3rd grade till the time he graduated, I always said, those tests aren't for you. Those tests are to see how the school is doing. And so I'm not even sure, as I sat and looked at those results, I'm not even sure anymore if that's what we should be focusing on, if we want to focus on, are our kids actually learning what we think they're learning? So I don't really have a question. I just have a thought that that maybe we need to look at that presentation a little differently and see what in fact our kids are learning, and maybe not. That's just my input on it. But I apologize to any administrator who felt I was too hard on them. And lastly, well, I did have the question about chronic absenteeism, but when are we gonna start focusing on that again?
We focus on it continuously, Mrs. Ronan. I mean, that's what I was saying before. Just because our numbers are good right now, we're still in the same process of looking at those numbers, following up on kids who are absent, trying to intervene if there are issues that arise. I don't think we've ever stopped focusing on it.
Well, clearly we had to stop in 2020, and last year with hybrid and it was I thought we had kind of taken the focus off of that.
But we stopped focusing on numbers then, but we were still focusing on kids who were not participating or were not engaging in remote instruction. So, we couldn't look at the numbers in the same way because they weren't physically present in school, but we've not ever stopped focusing on students who were not participating in instruction.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, the last thing I have is, I read a week or so ago that the National School Boards Association sent a letter on behalf, I believe they sent it on behalf of all of their members, asking for the federal government to help them with raucous and potentially disruptive or dangerous school board meetings, and that in response to that letter, the FBI is getting involved. I'm a little disturbed by that. I'm a lawyer, and when I went to law school, the First Amendment was with very, very limited restrictions, the First Amendment was the place to be. We do not want to chill free speech. And I certainly, although I feel that some of our board meetings, comments or complaints have been made that were unwarranted, I still feel that everybody has the right, and I want to hear our community's views, whether or not they agree with my own. So I'm a bit disturbed. I think that even if we got to a point where there was threats of violence or whatever, our local law enforcement would be more than capable of handling it. So I don't want the threat. I'm even a little nervous to speak about this publicly because I don't want the FBI to come after me, kind of thing. And please, I'm nobody's ever gonna, but whatever. So I guess with all of that being said, I believe that we are a member of the National School Boards Association. So my question to our administrators is, prior to this letter being published or sent to the federal government, were we asked what our opinion was on that particular issue?
I certainly don't believe so.
Okay. Now, sometimes with these kind of organizations, a national group will just take the vote, so to speak, of the state group. So has our state school boards association asked for input from our district that you're aware of on how we felt about this so that they could in turn give it to the National School Boards Association?
Again, Mrs. Run, I can't swear to it, but I can't believe that I would have not seen that and taken note of it, so I don't believe so.
Yeah, well, I also am pretty good at paying attention to what comes through our state school boards association, and I also have not seen anything. So I guess, and I'm more than willing to do this, I guess I want to find out how the National School Boards Association decided that this was the national opinion, such that they needed to write to the government about it. And I could do it on my own, and I'm more than happy to do it on my own, but I'm wondering if anyone else on the board is also interested in the genesis of this, because it ultimately, for me, may determine whether I think we should continue our membership in the National School Boards Association. So I just would like some feedback, I guess, on that. Thank you.
Well, I have a reaction, and that is, in my 15 years serving on the school board, I've never seen national attention put on school boards as it has been in the past 6 months. And most of it has been that school board members should be examining themselves as to why they're putting themselves in the positions they are, subjecting themselves to the vitriol and to the, rancor that has come across the country. It's in the front page of the Times. It's been, I guess, an issue in Newsday. The Herald wants to talk about masks and not instructional programs or instructional initiatives. So it's there, in terms of that. So it's something that if anybody is even looking at the paper or even the national media, I don't know the TV, but I'm sure that the stations are covering it as well, if it's in the press. So it has been a reality for the past 6 or 7 months. It seems to have calmed down, but, once again, I think it's all an extension of just recent developments and, state involvement and frustration at every level in terms of who's making the call. Is it an educational decision, or is it a Department of Health decision, and who is punting, and who's taking responsibility for doing what needs to be done? So I think it's just sort of a frustration that's being felt at every level. But it is something that has received national attention, and I'm not surprised that the National School Board has picked up the chat. So that's my reaction to your comment, Ms. Rowan.
Well, one thing I forgot to say that I wanted to add, so all the time when we pick up our phone or iPad, we're not just necessarily checking on our kids, doing, calling up documents. And this is the letter for the National School Board. And it talks about the conduct against public school officials. It says the classification of these heinous actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crime. Those are scary words to use about our own school board. Certainly they're not our school board meetings. And they're pretty scary words to say. I certainly would not consider anything that's happened at any school board meeting that I've ever attended to be either a hate crime or a form of the equivalent of domestic terrorism.
So, I agree with you. When we come here and we listen to our public speak, we want to hear your views. That's why we invite you to come and speak to us. Your views are very important. You reflect our community. I also look on those websites. I did not see that. And I look at the advocacy legislation that they tried to pass through, and I have not seen that at all. At the last 2 conferences I actually went to, they never mentioned that. They spoke about how to make sure that we ensure open communication between the boards and the community that it serves. So I will work with you on that if you would like. Thank you.
Support.
I would support it as
Any
well.
other comments, Mrs. Ronan? Anybody else?
No, I just said I would support that as well. The only other thing I wanted to say, I wish he was here tonight, Mr. Epstein. I just wanted to thank him and you, Mr. DeVito, when I was at parent-teacher conferences. One of the great large mirrors in one of our rooms in the high school was cracked. It was in like the yoga room. I think they use it for martial arts and some other things. I brought it to their attention, and they had already kind of highlighted it and knew it was there, but they worked very swiftly to fix it. And Mr. Epstein sent me a picture to let me know it has been fixed. So I wish he was here tonight, and just wanted to thank him publicly and thank you and facilities for getting on top of that, because it did look a little bit, I'm sure it wasn't a safety hazard, but it could have been. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the parent who asked a question about 10th grade English and the honors program and in terms of homework. In terms of, I have no reason to dispute her claims, but if in fact they are true, they are a concern. Is that, I think the parent who's still there, correct me if I'm mistaken, used the word policy or something to that effect concerning the homework or the not giving of homework in a 10th grade English class. So could you clarify that
It
It
for me?
is not policy. As you know, we did discuss, and I was all over the news about a no homework policy in elementary, which was not 3 years ago. It was a reading as the primary homework policy. But we have not had any kind of discussion about a no homework policy in the upper grades. That must be an individual teacher.
So she needs to take that up with the individual teacher or the
Or
Administration
they're
of the
building
building.
leadership, they're building leadership, yeah.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay. Questions and comments from the public, please?
Hi, Heather Lacazio, 636 East Park. First of all, I just want to say that I appreciate every single one of you that come here and do this. I try and come to as many meetings as I can. And at least from it is extremely appreciated that all of you do this. I know sometimes you guys take the brunt of people's frustrations. So just wanted to acknowledge the appreciation.
Thank you.
I don't really know if this is something to address. I know you, Dr. Romnell, you and I have spoken about this, if it's a policy or what. When we have teachers that are absent, they can be absent for any variety of things. Sick, family, personal, they joined the rock band and they're going on tour, I don't know. But if they're not gonna be in the classroom, at back to school night, they ask for us to use email as the main communication for the quickest response. But then when you have a teacher who's out and the parent emails, you don't get a response. So you email a second time and you don't get a response. So when you have a teacher that's been out for the last 6 days and the parents don't know, I'm just suggesting that maybe an out-of-office assistant goes on after like maybe 48 hours, especially if you're not going to send something to the parents saying Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so is out for the next XYZ or whatever the case may be. Because I know myself, without getting into specifics, I emailed 3 times in 6 days, and had I not made the phone call, wouldn't have even known that my teacher, whether or not they're coming back. But I just think it's very important if that's the main method of communication from parents and teachers, so that at least parents don't feel like they're being ignored. Second thing is, I know that they said that parent conferences are going to be virtual this year, and I believe, I don't know, Dr. Gall, Dr. O'Malley said that it was on the survey that most parents wanted back to school night open with in-person and parent conferences. I don't know if you have the numbers here, but I'm just curious what the numbers were as far as how many parents wanted parent. You can get that to me at a later date, that's fine. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is, we spoke about National Honor Society and you were questioning why we didn't have as many boys. Dr. Brian, you were doing it, right? My son's in 11th grade and this is when they all start getting. I spoke with a lot of the kids who, some are doing it, some don't want to. The majority that I'm hearing feedback as to why has to do with the 40 hours of community service. So I don't know if that's a state thing, if that's a national thing, but I feel like we could get a lot more kids if it wasn't 40 hours. Because a lot of these kids, besides doing sports and working and extracurricular activities, 40 hours plus the other community service that they have to by doing tutoring, it's just a lot to add on. And so, just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you for following up on that. Anybody else?
I'd like to thank the board and.
We have your name, sir.
I'm sorry, Andrew Wolf, 41 East Parkway.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the board, especially Ms. Verona, for bringing up with regard to the mask mandates, reaching out to the state to see what sort of metrics could be looked at in terms of lessening the requirements on our children. Thank you very much. That is a progress. Also, I want to thank Ms. Verona for bringing up the situation with the Department of Justice and the FBI with regard to their memo and looking into parents who speak out at board meetings. It is very concerning to me. This is an era when you could actually be jailed for being a political dissident. And I have noticed that there are certain parents who've been here for the past several meetings who've spoken out in the past who are absent right now. I don't know if perhaps it's why, it's quite possible, I don't know. But it is very worrisome. So I have some questions. Has the board been contacted by the Department of Justice or the FBI with regard to this? No? Okay. And if they were to contact you, which it sounds like it will be coming sometime in the near future, would it be in the interest of the board to perhaps say, sorry, we're not interested in participating in this?
I can almost guarantee that would be our reaction.
Thank you. All right, thank you. That's definitely comforting. Thank you.
Anybody else?
You know the FBI doesn't give up that easily, though. They'll get you on something else.
Hello. I can hear him, so how do I keep this thing on?
Sorry, I didn't hear him, so. Also, I just want to echo, thank you, Mrs. Braun, for bringing that up.
We just get your name.
Oh, sorry, Christina Kramer, 3620 East Broadway. Thank you so much for bringing that up. The whole mask thing is of great importance to me and my family. I'm just wondering if the masks are necessary on the buses when the kids are separated by full seats, one single seat separated by 6 or 10 feet. If they have it below their nose of getting phone calls home, I just want to make sure that that's a thing that has to be implemented in such a tight way.
You want to give us all your questions and I'll answer all
Sure, yeah. And then, so my 10-year-old who is just turned 11 in September, I asked him every day how school was, and I guess this is mostly for you, Mr. Romanelli. He said there was an emo fest when they walked into the doors, and I didn't know what that was. And so I just wanted to preface it with, when you are going on the train and the politicians are giving you cards, that's a form of promotion. And when those signs are on the lawns, when you're driving up Lido, that's promotion. And when the politicians give out stickers and buttons and any promotional materials to win an election, it's all promotion. So when I asked him what an emo fest was, he said that the LGBTQ committee was standing in the doorway of the middle school and promoting LGBTQ things, and he's asking me what they are. I have no problem with any gender, race, but I don't know why I feel it was being promoted there. They're 10, 11-year-olds. I don't know why we have to talk about gender and over-sexualize everything so young. I just don't think he's ready for it. He's asking me all these questions. What's the rainbow flag, this and that? I really just didn't know how to answer him. And let's see. That was really it. I was just more concerned about the whole masking thing, and you've answered my question so eloquently, Mrs. Verona. I'm so happy that you're going to be writing a letter, and Mrs. Conway, you as well were supportive in that whole statement with the FBI missed. And that's it.
So I can tell you that masks are required on school buses, but I can also tell you that we unfortunately don't have many buses where there's just that much space.
It's a postal bus.
But yeah, so unfortunately, it's something that we are required to do.
Okay.
But I understand necessity.
Yeah, I mean, they're by themselves, they're far away from each other, and I'm getting phone calls, and it's just hard for me to.
You're getting phone calls from us or from BOCES?
From you guys. Well, not you specifically, but Mrs. Bolter or,
Well, why don't you talk to me offline about that?
Okay, sometimes I just don't know how to get things done.
And I would just say, regarding the other topic, if you could just reach out to the building administration. I'm just not familiar with the.
You said they were giving out stickers and flags and stuff.
I think if you reach out to the middle school building administration, they can kind of walk you through the.
Acceptance is one thing,
club
promotion is another.
And the activities for the day.
Well, I don't, how would I know to reach out about something like that until after it happens?
No, that's what I'm advising you right now. So that'd be a great place to start. And then if there are still concerns, you can definitely reach out to me anytime.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Kate Judge Patton, 233 West Walton. Dr. Ryan, thank you for addressing that and bringing back my issue. I think that when I said policy, it is the educator's policy for the no homework for that classroom. What I feel is truly flawed is honors for all from a curriculum point of view, that how can your lowest learner succeed in honors, and how can your highest students feel challenged in that same scenario? I think honors for all, to me, without offering differentiation for the students who want to keep moving and excelling, I think that we should potentially offer something that addresses.
So on
the
that one,
wide array.
I have to respectfully disagree.
Okay.
I understand your perspective, and I know that there are people who strongly feel that way, but there, is tons of research that suggests that the teachers really differentiate well, that doing heterogeneously grouped classes where kids of different abilities are working together, that it actually raises the achievement levels for everyone. And I wasn't the superintendent when honors for all was being done as a policy here, but I do believe that, again, I don't know which classroom it is or which teacher it is, but if it's done really well, it can work for everyone. I've seen it work beautifully. In terms of the homework policy, I have mixed feelings on that. Are they doing really good work in classes? Do they have long-term projects that they're responsible for? Is the teacher giving them the ability to set their own deadlines and monitor their own work? Or is it just like they don't have any work to do ever? So there's different ways to look at things, but again, if you shoot me a quick email, I can look into the specific teacher.
I appreciate that, but I do believe for high school students, they need to have English homework. That's personal, but I would think that it can only help for students.
Yeah, I mean.
But thank you for bringing it back around.
Okay, thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Announcements? Long Beach Classroom Teachers Association.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. As we approach the School Board Recognition Week, so I want to say thank you very much for everything that you do in your positions to support and improve the educational community. The decisions you make at these meetings truly have an amazing impact on our education community and advancing quality education. You certainly show your passion for being financially responsible for the community. So I just want to say thank you very much for making Long Beach a great place to teach and work.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Minister Supervisor, PPS Group, Mr. Biesman.
As School Board Recognition, I'd like to thank you as well for all you community, for our students, our staff, and our for everyone here. So thank you so much for that. Also like to thank Ms. Beard and Ms. Tursey for the presentation on the middle school greenhouse, and also for our presentation on the plans.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Biesman. LBSEA, Long Beach School Employees Association, Group C. Anybody? No. Parent Teacher Association? Second.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you on behalf of the school board appreciation week coming up. We know that we have something for you for the next board meeting, just so you know. The other thing is, can we resurvey the parents regarding in-person parent-teacher conferences? I think when it was sent out at the end of last year, it was a little mixed signals at that point. So I think maybe trying to resurvey the parents, because I've been hearing from a lot of parents that they are wanting in-person parents.
And again, we can certainly do that, but they still do have the option to.
No, absolutely, but I just would like that to be an option. The other thing is, when that student came up and spoke earlier today at the high school PTSA meeting last week, there were so many students there up and speaking and advocating to Mr. Myers on some of the issues that they were seeing in the school. So it is happening on a school level also, so we're really excited about that. We wanted to thank everyone who supported the plant sale last week, and thank you, Mr. Myers, for letting us utilize the space. And this year we will be having the annual pie sale again, and we're going to be utilizing White Coast Farm because Whistle Stop will not be offering it, so more information to follow on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heckman.
Ms. Ackerman, what time do you have your meetings that you get so many students there?
It was at 3 o'clock, it was right after school, and it was Janine Sandmeyer's idea to start doing it, since it is PTSA, parents, students, and, students. So, I know that they're doing another one in January, and they encourage all of the, students who are involved, especially with, student government, to attend.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Heckman. Do you have a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor? Thank you again, everybody.